It's the Blue Notes Face-Off of the Week. And that beautiful NHL 94 music means we have a guest with us on this show, hailing from beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. It is Cori Crenshaw. Cori, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Probably the answer to your previous question of how everything is here and our side of everything is thank God we played the Blues because it finally gave us some happiness after a very long stretch of absolute misery, which is basically what happens every single time we play the Blues, considering the fact that I don't know what it is, but you guys must just hate us by now. There must just be a point that you guys are just done.
We can't fucking stand you anymore. That we are at that point of the relationship here. I mean, we used to like this time last year, I was one of the biggest, Arizona Coyotes apologists. It's like, hey, come on, stop picking on them. They've had a rough go of it, and then, rooting for you guys to beat Nashville, which I would still do that if you were to face Nashville again, because it's Nashville and screw them even worse. But it's just like now it's just like after 8 games and knowing that you're going to be in the Central Division to ruin our lives for the next, decade plus. I'm not looking forward to it. I don't know, Wags, you're not looking forward to it either.
No, not at all. We already have one team we loathe and despise and struggle against in Nashville. We don't need another one.
No, we don't. No, and the Nashville thing is it's part geographic. They're a geographic rival. Their fans are just naturally bullies, and they're just kind of they're a different breed in Nashville. Let's just say they learned hockey their own way. It's kind of like they how you like if you're learning to ride a bike. Let's just say. And, you got the training wheels and your dad or your mom's like helping you along and helping pick you up when you fall and all that stuff. Nashville didn't have that dad or mom around. They learned to ride that bike by themselves without training wheels. And this is the result. You have them throwing catfish on ice, and you have sister wives and trailers. It is just an absolute mess in Nashville. So that's what you got to look forward to. So just warning you in advance, they're a different breed. But let's talk about Blues Coyotes. That's why we brought you on here. And we talked about how the Blues basically, they fold into a turtle in the second half. That seems to be their thing lately, where they just completely say, you know what, second period, we'll come back for the third. It's fine. And it's becoming an epidemic. But from your perspective, Cori, why do you think the Yotes came away with a 3-2 win last night?
Well, I think part of it is that was the Leighton Accardo induction night. So that I think has a big deal to do with it when her whole family's there and they put her in the Ring of Honor, and they really kind of needed to show up that night as they haven't been previously for God knows how many games it was now. I'm just blanking all that out at this point because I'm just getting tired of all of it, starting with the Kings, going through the Knights and Avalanche, and it was just really bad stretch for the Coyotes there. So if there was ever a time for them to pull out, it was definitely against the Blues for her induction night. It was beautiful and everything that we're all hoping it to be, but I think also too, it's the one night that Keller actually shows up is against his own hometown. Is always the time he always seems to appear. I don't know why that is, but even on our podcast, I'd even said this is, if there's a game where I'm going to see the Coyotes come back and actually look like the Coyotes that we know that they can be, it's going to be in this game. And I couldn't tell you why. I could not tell you why they always show up in these games. But the first period was very much the way the Coyotes have been. And then when you started to see that surge towards the end of the first and then going into the second, that is how they play against the Blues. The beginning of the game was how they play against everyone else.
Couple listener comments here. Ashley Jones also not looking forward to life with the Coyotes going forward. So it's not just us. It's everyone, basically the entire Blues fan base. Derek points out that Darcy drives me crazy. Darcy Kemper. Keller drives me nuts because he's from St. Louis. Wags, we're going to talk about that here. He also didn't appreciate Kessel's slash on Blais. Garland seems to do well against us, so that's annoying too. I want to talk to you about Garland in a little bit, but first things first, Wags, you want to talk about our St. Louis boy?
Yeah. I mean, you've already mentioned it. Keller seems to play so well against his hometown team in the Blues. Richie Flores, your co-host, said that if he played only against the Blues, he'd have 100 points a season easily. So we talked a little bit about the Coyotes moving to the Central. Does that make it a little bit easier for you guys to swallow, knowing that Keller's going to face the Blues a lot more going forward?
Considering the fact that how long of a contract he has with us, I guess that'd be how I'm feeling about it, because of the fact that otherwise he doesn't feel necessary. There's a lot of people on this team that don't feel necessary. I'm glad that they brought up Garland, because Garland's having a great season and he has a really, really small contract. He's only at $750,000. So he's playing way above what he's getting paid, and he's definitely going to be getting a much higher payday. But that's the problem is Keller signed for like 7 years, I think is what it was. And so we're stuck with him for a long period of time. And so I would like to see him, come into his own. He had a really great first year, had that traditional sophomore struggle, and then he just hasn't really come back to that first rookie season quite yet. I don't know if he'll ever get there. He kind of needs more protection around him. He's a smaller guy. It's funny, in I think it was 1 or 2 games ago, Oliver Ekman-Larsson had gotten cross-checked while he was on the ground, and Clayton Keller was the one that decided to try and fight to kind of defend him, and it really kind of just really showed how undersized he is. So it didn't really help his cause, but I think in the long run, it's going to help him anytime he has to play Blues a lot. So for his own career purposes anyways, because it's literally the only time he fully shows up on the ice. And unless his team really changes quite a bit, I don't see him being extremely successful.
Well, I mean, it looked like he was turning a bit of a corner this year. I mean, he's 13 goals, 18 assists, 45 games. Corsi for percentage is almost 55%, which is good. Jays Fresh's analytics show he's 2 wins above replacement, which is an improvement over the minus 0.2 and minus 1 the past 2 seasons. But like you said, you almost feel like you need to get more around him. So can he improve this team by himself, or who would you be looking at to kind of build around him to make him more productive like he was in his rookie year?
Well, so that's the thing. You're either going to have someone who's larger and can give him space on the ice, because once he has some space, that helps. But at the same time, if you give him a full-blown breakaway shot, he cannot score it to save his life. It is god awful, and it's so quite frustrating in that sense. So there's gonna. In reality, he is a very good playmaker. That's more of up his alley. That's more the style he likes to play. And you can definitely tell that the way that the Coyotes are pushing him is outside of his normal comfortabilities. And they really needed him to step up and really be a goal scorer instead. He's just never going to be a Patrick Kane. That's just not how he plays, and that's not who he is. And so it's going to, honestly, I think, he's going to need someone that's going to be a natural goal scorer on a line with him in order for him to be productive. He's going to be getting a lot more points in the fact of assists than I think he will ever in goals in his career. He's trying very hard, and you can tell that he's trying hard to be that goal scorer for this team. It's just, you can see how unnatural it is for him. Yeah. And as much as he progresses, it's still never his like apex of what he can be.
Honestly, Wags, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Jaden Schwartz, in that Schwartz is a guy that he's not a goal scorer. I think a lot of fans wanted him to be a goal scorer starting out. And Keller also has the same problem Schwartz has, in that he can never score on a breakaway, like ever. Like if I had a dime for every time Jaden Schwartz had a clear-cut opportunity, even breakaway or maybe just like an open shot in the slot, and he can't convert, I mean, I would be able to buy a house in the St. Louis area right now with cash.
Well, also add in the amount of times he falls down without like anybody really around him, you would be a millionaire.
Oh God, yeah, man. There is a drinking game that we need to develop here with Jaden Schwartz, and he would get us all in all of our livers in trouble. Let's go ahead and talk about players that don't drive us nuts. Another player that stood out to me last night and really all season long is Jakob Chychrun, the left-handed defenseman. If you don't know who Jakob Chychrun is, you're gonna know about him more in the years to come, because of course you think of Arizona, you think of Phil Kessel, you think of Keller, you think of even Oliver Ekman-Larsson, but Chychrun has the exact same goals and assists as Clayton Keller, 13 goals, 18 assists, and he's a defenseman. So how good, Cori, is Chychrun gonna get?
That's what Jakob Chychrun is. Between him and Conor Garland this season, they are the saints on this team because they are kind of the saving graces. Richie has this whole thing going on with a friend of his called Chick Norris, is what the hashtag that they started, because they wanted him in the Norris conversation a long time ago. I've always been a proponent for offensive defensemen. I think they have a lot of purpose here in the NHL, and I especially think they have a lot of purpose when you put them in a 3-on-3 overtime. So I really think that they are really important kind of for the future of hockey. I was a big proponent of Keith Yandel on the Coyotes for a really long time, still am, and a lot of people didn't really believe me in that because of the fact that they felt like his turnovers made him more costly than beneficial. But in a league that's going to be focusing more on goals than anything else, that's where you're going to be wanting to have your defenseman, I think, moving. So Jakob Chychrun is fitting into this league, I think, very perfectly, and he is just growing faster than anyone had ever thought he would. He's only 23 and very newly 23. He just turned, I think, last month 23, and he is starting to hit his strides really well. And he is everything that Oliver Ekman-Larsson should be. And the fact that he hasn't really been playing like that, and he's the captain of this team and really hasn't been carrying his leadership role very well and hasn't really been performing on the ice. I'm glad that someone else on this team stepped up and kind of took his place, because of the fact that Oliver Ekman-Larsson just really, I don't know if he has it in him anymore, especially here in Arizona, to do that. He kind of needed a change of scenery, but he had very small options that he gave the Coyotes of where he could be moved. So that didn't really work out, but I'm glad someone at least is taking his spot and doing that. And that in itself, I feel like that stat proves that Clayton Keller isn't doing as well as you would think he was. It's better, but it's still not as good as he should be.
That's understandable. While we're talking about desirable Coyotes here, you brought up my favorite Coyote, at least at the moment. It used to be Keller, but Conor Garland. Let's pretend for a minute that I'm Blues GM Doug Armstrong and you're Coyotes GM Bill Armstrong. And I'm calling about the availability of Conor Garland because I'm sick of seeing him. He destroys the Blues every time he faces us. He's a hell of a player. And I think there were some whispers that, they were taking calls on Garland at the deadline. I don't know how legit they were or not, but of course, it got my mind rolling here. I adore Garland. He plays he plays a scrappy game. I know that would get fans to like him here. So do you ever see Garland leaving Arizona? And if so, what's it going to take? What are we going to have to give up to get Conor Garland in the Blue Note?
It's going to take a lot to try and fill back up this pipeline. So obviously this team is really, really missing a lot when it comes to what Chaika left us with, because of basically lost all of those draft picks and, a bunch of fines on a team that was already financially hurting, and literally just left the team high and dry. He now has been suspended since then. So but it doesn't really fill the hole that he left. So it would really have to be filling that pipeline, because of the fact that this team, as it sits right now, they can't rebuild this team from draft picks, because of the fact that they just don't have any that are low enough to really make a difference. And so they would have to be picking throughout the NHL right now and really kind of dumping some players that they would like to not really dump. And I think Conor Garland is one of them, because It's funny, I had gotten kind of heated on the podcast a couple weeks ago when we were playing Knights, I can't remember who was quoted, but someone was quoted saying that Conor Garland was a dirty player because he had tabletopped someone during the Knights game. And I was
Mark
like,
Stone, and we loved it. We loved that hit on Mark Stone.
That's why that's one reason we love him.
And I was like, you've got to be fucking high to think that he is a dirty player. He is literally just the only player on this team with actual grit. Once Bunting came up, he's given this team a little bit more grit on that, which is nice, but he's the only one you're getting to see that excitement and that drive really out of. So losing that, I think, would be detrimental to this team, and I would rather not see him go. However, I could see if there was a lot on the table to try and fill that pipeline and fill some like really desperately needed spots on this team. I could see them doing it for the fact that, he is deserved a large pay raise, but I just think he should stay here and they should figure out how to make money up with the fact of all of the people that aren't really putting in the effort on the ice that he is.
And of course, I'm just jumping real quick.
No,
of course, you have to repair that pipeline, partly because of the assets he gave up in the Taylor Hall trade. Which, thank God, he went to Boston, because the Blues were in on Taylor Hall for some stupid reason, and Taylor decided he wanted to be a Boston Bruin, and all the power to him. Thank God, because that means he's not a St. Louis Blue. Thank God for that. We were not down with Taylor Hall.
I can't say he did anything here. Like, I really can't say that it helped whatsoever. It really, outside of it, made everyone else get lazy.
Yeah,
so,
he had one good year, the Hart Trophy year, a couple decent ones surrounding it, but he's never led his team to glory. He's never been the reason a team, went to the playoffs. I mean, he's an okay player. He's just one of the most overhyped players in the NHL. And, as far as the pipeline thing goes, and Wags, I think you'd agree with me on this. As far as a hypothetical trade for Garland, unless you really need goaltending, which you guys don't, I don't think we have much to offer them, Wags, in a Garland deal, because our pipeline is pretty barren.
Yeah, it almost feels like we're in that same boat in a sense where we kind of have to restock our cupboard as well. We've got some defensive prospects, we got some goaltending prospects, but the one thing that this team needs, offense, they just don't seem to have. And you were talking a little bit about some of the guys that have kind of struggled on this team. You got the Seattle draft coming up in a couple of months. Are you looking at possibly, and I don't know who has no movement clause and all that stuff, but who's the one guy that you're like, we were Justin Falk last year, this year, we don't know who we want to give Justin up. Falk. But like, who is the one guy on that team that you could sit there and say, man, if we really exposed him and maybe kind of upped his game a little bit, we would want Seattle to take him? Is it a Ekman Larson? Is it a Clayton Keller with that contract? I mean, who is the guy that you're looking at?
I would be fine with either of them, honestly. There's actually less people we would like to keep than people that we wouldn't mind going away at this point. We're getting a little bit ruthless. Like, there's a very small list of people that as we've said before, it's basically kind of a Garland, Dvorak. I'm trying to remember who our third person was at this point, and Chychrun. Those are our three. Obviously Chychrun. So those were kind of our three that we were like, oh no, we need to keep these three. Everyone else, it's like kind of fire sale at this point.
Yeah.
Even Antti Ranta has been injured so often. If we have, 4 goaltenders that are capable, Prosnetsov is a little bit on the weaker side, but Hill is pretty decent. And then, you guys got to see Darcy Kuemper his first time back in like forever. So, we have some goaltenders that Antti Ranta can also go with his injuries somewhere else as well. So we're kind of at the point where there's a very small amount that we actually want to keep.
Which is crazy because we are also going for the playoffs, just like we are. And it's crazy to hear that about a potential playoff team. But I just had a question, John. I want to jump in real quick here. You're talking about players that he could be protecting. Aiden Hill, just from the looks of it, has done pretty well, filling in whenever Ranta's been hurt and Kemper's been hurt, which has, both have been hurt, a fair bit. Is there a chance that the Coyotes protect him over Kuemper and Ranta? Because you mentioned Ranta might be on the way out. I mean, is Kuemper getting too hurt for your liking?
That's a very interesting question, honestly. That is the question, I feel like, because of the fact that this is the second season that Kemper's been injured like this. It happened midway through last season. It was like December 17th. They're playing Minnesota, and you know how he feels about Minnesota. He was completely getting worked in that game. Should have been pulled way earlier and injured. And he was out for the rest of that season. Luckily, he was able to come back because of COVID and that whole bubble situation. But he has also been getting injured very, very often. And Aiden Hill came in and played like 10 games in a row before they put Prosnetsova in. So he is able to hold his own for sure. But it's hard. You need to have a goaltender that is like at the caliber of Darcy Kemper to be able to fill the holes that this defense has been allowing for many games now. So it's very hard. That's a very interesting question. I'm not sure what I would do in the situation. I think Hill is definitely the future in that sense, but I still feel like there is a need for Darcy Kemper at the moment.
By the way, at least Kemper is not Ben Bishop, who I think is at this point is being held up by ABC gum and Scotch tape. By the way, you've got a bit of a fan club going here, Cori. One Richard Flores says, "Man, Cori is always so right."
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. I hear you make amazing alcoholic milkshakes as well.
Ooh, man!
Oh yeah, did you see the pictures of those?
I did not.
Oh my goodness,
man! I wish we could have gotten him on the show, man. I mean, I need some of those in my life right about now. Life is stressful.
You started walking. You don't need an alcoholic milkshake.
Yes. But you know, like protein afterwards. Okay. Yeah. It's for the protein. It's for the protein. It's for the recovery.
Oh boy. All right. You've basically described the fact that the Coyotes and Blues essentially might be the same team. Goaltending, Arizona's got defensive issues on both sides, scoring issues on both sides.
We have players that drive us nuts.
Exactly. It's unbelievable how similar they are. And lo and behold, they're in they're in the race for the 4th spot in the West Division. Basically the right to get absolutely clapped by Colorado. We talked on Twitter about this earlier in the season, and neither one of our shows seems particularly interested in winning that 4th seed. Yes, it's the playoffs and you want to get in, and if you get in, anything can happen. But has that changed in your mindset for you or Arizona fans that, hey, even if it's the 4th spot and we may get blown out by Colorado, it's still the playoffs we want to get in?
I mean, it's always nice to get into the playoffs. And I mean, the reason why no one got moved at the deadline is because they claim that they've earned the right to try and get into the playoffs. So, I mean, more power to them, I guess. I don't know. It's going to be the same thing of where they get in and then Colorado just annihilates them. And then we're back at the same place I feel like we were last season. I feel like nothing has changed, which is basically what we were trying to say going into the season. Like, this is going to be very, very, very similar in that regard. And it's funny because, my back and forth with Vegas with the fact that they thought that we were going to be at the very bottom of the league because of the fact that we lost Taylor Hall, and they thought Taylor Hall contributed for I don't know why. And so they thought that this team was going to be horrible without him. And we were like, they're going to basically the same team you saw before. And that's basically what we've seen here is there's nothing really that's advanced about this team. And there's nothing that's really gone to shit about this team either. So I don't know. They can get into the playoffs for shits and grins, but it's not going to be anything that's going to be too exciting other than the fact that they can put on there that they made it to the playoffs.
Another weird. One Armstrong sounds like the other too. They earn the rights.
This is another mirror on the wall moment because the Coyotes don't make a trade at the deadline because they think they've earned a right to go into the playoffs. The Blues don't make a trade at the deadline because, well, it's a little more complicated. It's partly they've earned the right to go into the playoffs, partly because Robert Thomas is hurt. So we better keep that Hoffman guy around for a little while longer. And then, of course, as Wax mentions, we both have GMs named Armstrong. It is. I feel like.
Well, we took ours from you anyway, so.
That's true. That is true. So there we go. And then you have the pride of Swansea, Illinois, Clayton Keller on your team as well. So it's just the good vibes just keep rolling here. The Avalanche, we talked about them. They had a 6-2 record against the Oats this season, and that series is officially done. And boy, how I wish the Blues were done with them too, but we're not, because thanks NHL schedule makers, you're the best.
Your schedule sucks than ours.
It really does, and not only that, the way they did it. I mean, we basically had nothing but California teams. Essentially, it felt like for the first few months, and I got kind of sick of seeing them. I mean, it was like, and not only that, but of course, because it's Blues hockey, they weren't the automatic wins that we thought they would be. Yep. So that was also an issue. I
know that feeling too.
Yeah. So I want to say we'll make our guesses here after I ask this, but say the Coyotes get that 4th seed and they're going up against Colorado. How many wins do you think the Coyotes could get against Colorado?
1, maybe 2 are lucky.
Okay, I have us. If it's the Blues in Colorado, I think the Blues have it in them to get to Game 6. More likely Game 5, I think. I'm not optimistic. Wags, are you the optimist among us?
A week ago, I would have been. I really, really would have been. But I think I'm in the same boat as you with maybe 5. They could probably push it to 6. They just, once again, like we talked about in the Open, they get any form of adversity against them and they fold. And I feel like they may get a win. And you know what it really reminds me of? And I can't believe I'm going to bring this up, but it reminds me of 96 against the Red Wings, where they could probably play and beat this team, but there's just got a little bit of a hold over them that one thing goes wrong and it just all falls apart.
Yeah, it's a real problem, and as Craig Berube said, this team is fragile, and so they can rise up like the phoenix out of the ashes, or they can just completely fold like a lawn chair. I predicting where the Blues end up, Wags. I mean, it is a challenge in of itself. It is basically, I feel like you have to be a rocket scientist, and understand quantum physics to know where the Blues are going to end up, because I have no freaking idea.
I just want one of Tony Stark's time travel suits, so I can just go back in time to 2019 and just be like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, you take the suit, I'll take the DeLorean. And go back to that time when we didn't have COVID. COVID wasn't a worry, and we had a full Market Street and a Stanley Cup parade, which I missed that day, by the way, because I was a little under the weather, and I regret it. Everyone reminds me of that. So
I was driving back from Alabama, so I also missed it.
Good times. Yeah. In fact, you were still in Alabama when the Blues won the cup as well, too. Gulf Shores.
Yeah, we were in Gulf Shores, and we found the one place that actually had the Stanley Cup on, and it just so happened to be a Hooters. And it just so happened that every Blues fan in Gulf Shores found that Hooters, and we got to celebrate with every Blues fan down in Gulf Shores, Alabama. It was pretty nice. And you know what else? Back in 2019 we didn't have to talk about is the fact that ads were not going to be on jerseys. We're going to talk about this after the interview is over, but we kind of wanted to get your opinion on the report that ads could start appearing on NHL jerseys in the 22-23 season. Are you pro or against ads on hockey equipment?
So it's funny. We've actually had a conversation a couple times because of the fact that everyone started losing their damn minds over the helmets in the beginning there. So they were going fucking nuts over. Oh, and naming the divisions. Us as the Honda West division. Which I still didn't even remember it for the longest time. I was like, I kept on having to ask her. I was like, what's our division again? And honestly, I could care less. I don't think we're gonna get into a point where it's like soccer, where they're the name of their sponsor is the name of their team. I don't think they'll be at that point. But I mean, in a world stage, exactly. Soccer is like the biggest sport out there, and people have ads all over the place, and no one really cares. So that's why I just feel like if it means that the NHL gets more money and the sport can grow, then I'm here for it, because I would rather them not have to struggle post COVID like basically everyone is, and I'm sure hasn't already done it. I just feel like
go ahead.
Yeah, no, so and it's not like they haven't done it, and I feel like the reason why hockey fans are struggling with this is hockey in itself is more of a traditionalist in fans, in the fact that they always have to have everything kind of the way it always used to be, and change to them is nothing that they ever like.
Yeah, that's true, and of course, just people dealing with change in general sometimes can be, that can be a challenge in of itself. And then, as you said, NHL is a bit traditionalist in that regard. Although, as Derek points out, I mean, the KHL jerseys, I think they look okay. I mean, I have some KHL jerseys in my closet. They're not too obscene, compared to the Finnish league. Like, it looks like NASCAR drivers on ice, essentially, that's been the case for a long time. I mean, there's there's so many ads on Finnish league jerseys that you can almost barely see what color jersey it is, just because they're blocking all the color and uniqueness out of it. So, I mean, I thought the helmet ads were pretty tasteful. They haven't been a distraction or anything like that. And, it gets for the Blues, it'll get Enterprise's logo on TV for, a few seconds, that's fine by Enterprise, but it's not in your face. So I'm sure the NHL will do something like that. And they're not going to do the Man U jersey where, all of a sudden the crest is being replaced by a Chevrolet logo or anything like that. I don't think they'll go that far. And if they do, that's the end of my hockey jersey collecting. Done. I will not buy one of those jerseys. Just flat out. Cool.
The sport's too classy for that. I don't think they'll ever get to that point. I
agree with that. And you've been a very classy guest. And I want to thank you for being on Blue Notes. What do you got coming up this week?
We will be talking about the game and Clayton Ricardo's induction into the Ring of Honor, and so we'll try to not get emotional. Richie almost got a little emotional last time, so we'll try and keep things a little bit more upbeat because the Coyotes haven't won a game in God knows how long. So it's very nice to at least have win under our belt, whether it is basically us doing the same thing we always do, as in being the annoying little brother and always having to try and pick on you guys. So that's basically what we'll be up to, and we'll probably talk about the milkshake that we made because it's too big to not talk about that on the pod.
All right. Well, hopefully the milkshake brings all the listeners to the yard. And and by the way, where can they find you?
They can find us everywhere except for Twitter. So I guess on everything else at Cori Richie Show, and then on Twitter at Cori_Richie Show. I don't know why we did that. And then you can find me at Cori Nicole with 2 E's, and you can find Richie at R Flores 91.
All right, Cori Crenshaw with the Sporty with Cori and Richie show. I want to thank you for joining Blue Notes, and I'm going to go ahead and run your promo just so people get an idea of what they can expect from you and Richie. And just again, thanks for being a part of the show.
Thank you for having me on. I'm Cori Crenshaw.
I'm Richie Suave Flores.
And this is Sporty with Cori and Richie Suave
on the Hockey Podcast Network.
What did I just listen to?
Oh, this game is just bullshit now.
Oh my gosh. They actually made me feel uncomfortable. What was it? Panty what?
The game has gone to bullshit.
Panty melted?
Why do we record these during the middle of games? Oh God. Be sure to listen to Cori and I every Monday. We are your go-to source for the Arizona Coyotes on the Hockey Podcast Network.